Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, we talk about all things fandom on this channel, and we talk about it in a positive way. If that's something that appeals to you, we're happy you joined us today, because today we've got to talk about Peacemaker Season 2, the finale, and possibly series final. But this will contain spoilers, so you have been warned. Let's jump right into it. Alright, so whether or not you agree with James Gunn's interpretation of the DCU, this is what we have for now, and it is sort of exciting to see where he's taken this. And let me explain why. This series over time has made you care about the characters surrounding him, the 11th Street Kids. But from this point on, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, go ahead and stop the video and go watch the series and catch up to where we are. Go on, we'll wait. If you're still here, you don't care about spoilers, or you're not watching the series for whatever reason, and you just want to hang out with us and get the spoiler review, then hey, we're glad. We're glad you stopped by. And if you've seen the episode, then we're going to have to talk about that as well. So Peacemaker Season 2 has been this crazy ride, really. The whole season he's been trying to go to this alternate dimension to be what he thinks he should be, because where he is, he feels like he's got the raw end of the deal. He feels like no matter what he's done, people around him are dying. Everyone is just against him. And because of this, he wants a better life. And he finds it in this alternative dimension. And in this alternative dimension, it also happens to be, surprise, a Nazi world. Well, in the last episode, they left that world because it was not what they wanted at all. Him and his friends all leave that world. They come and get him. They get out of there. And we saw that he was leaving to go to prison. He was leaving to surrender himself to Rick Flag Sr. And in this episode, we sort of continue with that. Now, I'm not going to give you the complete rundown of this episode, because a lot of this episode people have said was a little bit slower. And I do agree with the fact that it was a little bit slower. However, it's a strange thing, because as slow as this episode was, so much happened in this episode. So much happened that we have to talk about. We are going to highlight what exactly the episode accomplished. So the number one thing that this episode did accomplish was that we got to see him in prison. He had surrendered himself. He doesn't want to be in contact with any of the 11th Street Kids. We see them talking about this, about how he doesn't want to see them. They've tried. And he's just not having it. Well, Rick Flag Sr. and Argus now have the multi-dimensional device that allows them to travel through worlds. That's right, so they're looking for something. And we see that Amelia and John are working for them. This is the thing, so many of the Argus employees are being killed in these alternate dimensions because they are looking for a habitable dimension. They want to find a dimension where people could live on. Now, one of the funnier dimensions that they go to is this place that the crew dubbed Candyland. You can't say Candyland because it is copyrighted, but that's what the crew kind of dubbed it. And on this planet, they have what are these little imps, and they look like they are essentially gummy bears. They have multiple colors. They're really cute, but sort of ugly at the same time. They're really wild to look at. But these things are vicious, and it's a callback to when Peacemaker first goes to the alternate dimension, and they're telling the story of how one of the imps got in to their house that followed them from one of the doors, and it was fighting against them and all this other stuff. And that was a cool thing because that callback was nice. But the episode had actually opened up with what happened on the boat. That's right, what happened on that boat that we kept hearing about the entire time this season. What really happened between Amelia and Peacemaker. And it's kind of a cute thing because they seem to actually bond. While Argus is going and looking into this stuff, of course, Peacemaker is still in prison, and they start to become a little bit disillusioned by what Argus is doing because they're thinking to themselves that Argus is actually hurting them. Argus is actually not on the up and up. John and Amelia are discussing it, and Amelia's like, we're doing our job. But John's like, for what? And she tells him that they are kind of looking to make the world a better place. And he says, when have we ever done anything to make the world a better place? And he's not wrong. So eventually, of course, they find a world that is actually able to be used. And it seems like it's a barren world. It doesn't have anything in it, but it's breathable, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. Now, this is where things get a little bit odd because Leota had gone to Adrian and talked to him about doing something cool. And they, of course, use this money eventually when she talks him into it to help Peacemaker. They get him out of prison. He then runs to a hotel. So while all this is going on, Leota and them are slowly starting to figure out some things. They're starting to realize that it isn't all it's cracked up to be. And at one point, even Sasha is like, she doesn't like what Argus is doing. And she goes to Amelia and they talk about it. And Amelia sends her to Leota. Well, now they decide that they're going to go and get Peacemaker. So, you know, at this point, they go and get Peacemaker. They kind of tell him what's up. But he says he don't want to be a part of anything they have to do because he is still thinking of himself as the angel of death. Well, Leota has this really great scene. Now, earlier on in the episode, she's talking to her girlfriend, and she's saying that she's going to have to leave her, that they can't be happy together. And it's a really emotional scene. And a lot of this episode is really emotional and musical numbers. And that's essentially what it is. And it's really weird, but it moves pretty fast. And then when they're talking to Peacemaker, Leota has another great scene. She really gets this episode going as far as emotion. A lot of the emotion really, I do feel like, is her. But John Cena does great in this role too. When Peacemaker's talking to her, you really feel what he's talking to her about. And she tells him that every time that he's done what others want him to do, that's when people die. It's not when he does what he wants to do because he's a good person. And they try to get him to go and do what they're doing. So they leave. And as they're leaving, he comes out and he says to Amelia, did that night on the boat mean anything to you at all? Did it mean anything? And she doesn't want to answer this, but then ultimately she does, and she says it meant everything. And then they have him. Like, they have Peacemaker. He's ready. He's down. And what we find out is that they have indeed built something with that money. They have made Checkmate. And here's the thing. With them making Checkmate, they have Langston Fleury, they have Sasha Bordeaux, and not only that, they have Judo Master, all have joined this company with them. So we have Checkmate now in the DCU, and that's big. A lot of the people that I've heard talking about it, some of them don't know what Checkmate is, but Checkmate has played a big part in DC history. So if you know DC Comics and you don't know what Checkmate is, try to check out some of those stories because it's great. And then we learned that this inhabitable world that they stepped onto, they decide that they're going to call this Salvation. And this is big too, because Salvation in the comics is from this little mini-series comic called Salvation Run. What it is this place, and they throw all the villains there. And it's supposed to be uninhabited, but it's not uninhabited. In fact, it's kind of crazy. Because even though they think that it's uninhabited, it actually is a breeding ground for the parademons and other things. So they're actually bringing in some of these people, some of the new gods, Darkseid and some of those. It's kind of really awesome to think about. Because one of the people that this strongly hints at is Desaad. And if you don't know who Desaad is a fictional supervillain from the comics, a new god from the planet Apocalypse. He is a loyal, sadistic servant of Darkseid. And this sets him up really nicely. So a lot of people are talking about it could be him. We could be getting him. And Darkseid could ultimately be the big bad later on. But this also raises a lot of good questions because now, after they set up Checkmate, we figure out what's happening. Rick Flag Sr. actually has Peacemaker kidnapped. And what he does is he throws him into Salvation. He throws him into this dimensional world they found, Salvation, that's supposed to not have anything in it. And the second they close the doors, we hear this horrible sound. And that horrible sound, that, my friends, is the sound of trouble. And that, my friends, is the sound of that cameo we were promised. We were promised a big cameo, and a lot of people thought it was going to be Superman, this, that. We actually theorized things too, but we were all wrong because what actually ended up happening was that it was two things. It was Checkmate and it was Salvation. Those two big things are the cameo. And the future of the DCU looks so much crazier because of it. So that's kind of where it ended, and that's why a lot of people were mad. A lot of people thought that it should have ended in a better way, but you have to realize that's the setup. And then I've heard people say that he promised us that we wouldn't have to watch all this stuff to understand what's going on. And you don't. Having a connected universe and having it be to where you have to watch to understand everything is entirely two different things. You don't have to watch Peacemaker to understand what's happening. You just have to know that they're using things like that to build the world, to actually make the world that they're creating happen. And you don't have to watch everything to fully understand. And that's what James Gunn really wanted to do with the DCU. So that's why I think this episode was good. This episode was interesting. And if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. This is the part where I have to leave you guys off. I want to hear what you guys think. Are you excited about all this news? What do you think is going to happen? And how do you think this is going to affect Superman Man of Tomorrow? Because that is the next big Superman project after Supergirl comes out next year. That is the big project coming out after that. And this sort of leads into why him and Lex Luthor were teamed up, according to what I've heard. And if that's the case, how do you think that's going to be a thing? I want to hear all of your thoughts, your ideas, your theories. So make sure you are leaving me that comment in the comment box below. Then make sure that you're sharing this video with all of your friends so they can be a part of our crazy conversation. And it is going to be a crazy conversation that we're going to start to have about the future of the DCU. So you don't want to miss it. Then, if you like positive content on YouTube, you're going to want to tell the algorithm this. So make sure that you hit that like button, and hopefully that makes a difference and you start to see more positive content in your feed. But you have to tell the algorithm by hitting that like button. Then, friends, if you're liking our content personally and you like our channel and what we bring to the table, then you're going to want to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell that's right next to it so that you never miss a single video we do. Because friends, let's face it, at the end of the day, I know it and you know it. Fandom is family.